Gathered at Fort Hood in Killeen, Texas for a memorial service for the victims of last week's massacre. 12 soldiers and 1 civilian shot to death, allegedly by an army psychiatrist. President Obama is there. He'll be speaking at the service, which began just a short time ago. He'll address the mourners right after General George Casey, the Army Chief of Staff, who's speaking now. Earlier today, the President and the First Lady met privately with families of the fallen and with some of the 42 wounded, the 27 who've been released from the hospital. And after the service, he'll be visiting with soldiers who are still in the hospital. There are 15 of those, including 8 who are currently in intensive care. The President said he wants to, quote, personally express the incredible heartbreak that we all feel. Dean Reynolds is in Killeen, Texas at Fort Hood. And Dean, this is the worst incidence of violence at a U.S. military base in history. I can't imagine the mood is anything but extremely somber there today.
It is, Katie. What you see out here are several thousand people who are coming to grips with a couple of things. One is obvious that they're going to have to be referring to their friends and loved ones and comrades in the past tense, which is difficult under any circumstances, but because of what happened here and how it happened and who may well have been behind it, all those emotions are aggravated, and you can see it on their faces. There's a sense also of a certain amount of insecurity that could have happened here, and the Army has taken every opportunity to say that they are determined to improve security on the base, not only the physical security, but the mental security. They will be trying to identify soldiers who may be suffering from mental problems, like the kind that apparently gripped the suspect in this case. Okay.
Dean, are they doing anything differently in terms of security in the aftermath of this massacre?
Well, we see a lot more soldiers at checkpoints and so forth, but I can't really say that that is because of this event. It may well be because of the news media and President Obama's appearance here.
All right, and the President is about to speak. Dean, let's listen.
To the Fort Hood community, to Admiral Mullen, General Casey, General Cohn, Secretary McHugh, Secretary Gates, most importantly to family, friends, and members of our armed forces. We come together filled with sorrow for the 13 Americans that we have lost, with gratitude for the lives that they led, and with a determination to honor them through the work we carry on. This is a time of war. If these Americans did not die on a foreign field of battle, they were killed here, on American soil, in the heart of this great state, in the heart of this great American community. This is the fact that makes the tragedy even more painful, even more incomprehensible. For those families who have lost a loved one, no words can fill the void that's been left. We knew these men and women as soldiers and caregivers. You knew them as mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, sisters and brothers. But here is what you must also know. Your loved ones endure through the life of our nation. Their memory will be honored in the places they lived and by the people they touched. Their life's work is our security and the freedom that we all too often take for granted. Every evening that the sun sets on a tranquil town, every dawn that a flag is unfurled, every moment that an American enjoys life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that is their legacy. Neither this country nor the values upon which we were founded could exist without men and women like these 13 Americans. And that is why we must pay tribute to their stories. Chief Warrant Officer Michael Cahill had served in the National Guard and worked as a physician's assistant for decades. A husband and father of 3, he was so committed to his patients that on the day he died, he was back at work just weeks after having had a heart attack. Major Eduardo Caballero spoke little English when he came to America as a teenager, but he put himself through college, earned a PhD, and was helping combat units cope with the stress of deployment. He's survived by his wife, sons, and stepdaughters. Staff Sergeant Justin DeCrow joined the Army right after high school, married his high school sweetheart, and had served as a light-wheeled mechanic and satellite communications operator. He was known as an optimist, a mentor, and a loving husband and father. After retiring from the Army as a major, John Gaffney cared for society's most vulnerable during 2 decades as a psychiatric nurse. He spent 3 years trying to return to active duty in this time of war. And he was preparing to deploy to Iraq as a captain. He leaves behind a wife and son. Specialist Frederick Green was a Tennessean who wanted to join the Army for a long time and did so in 2008 with the support of his family. As a combat engineer, he was a natural leader, and he is survived by his wife and 2 daughters. Specialist Jason Hunt was also recently married, with 3 children to care for. He joined the Army after high school, did a tour in Iraq, and it was there that he re-enlisted for 6 more years on his 21st birthday so that he could continue to serve. Staff Sergeant Amy Kruger was an athlete in high school, joined the Army shortly after 9/11, and had since returned home to speak to students about her experience. When her mother told her she couldn't take on Osama bin Laden by herself, Amy replied, "Watch me." Private First Class Aaron DeMelton was an Eagle Scout who just recently signed up to do one of the most dangerous jobs in the service, defuse bombs, so that he could help save lives. He was proudly carrying on a tradition of military service that runs deep within his family. Private First Class Michael Pearson loved his family and loved his music, and his goal was to be a music teacher. He excelled at playing the guitar and could create songs on the spot and show others how to play. He joined the military a year ago and was preparing for his first deployment. Captain Russell Seeger worked as a nurse for the VA, helping veterans with post-traumatic stress. He had extraordinary respect for the military and signed up to serve so that he could help soldiers cope with the stress of combat and return to civilian life. He leaves behind a wife and son. Private Francesca Velez, daughter of a father from Colombia and a Puerto Rican mother, had recently served in Korea and in Iraq and was pursuing a career in the Army. When she was killed, she was pregnant with her first child. I was excited about becoming a mother. Lieutenant Colonel Juanita Warren was the daughter and granddaughter of Army veterans. She was a single mom who put herself through college and graduate school and served as a nurse practitioner while raising her 2 daughters. She also left behind a loving husband. Private First Class Cam Gong came to America from Thailand as a small child. He was a husband and father who followed his brother into the military because his family had a strong history of service. He was preparing for his first deployment to Afghanistan. These men and women came from all parts of the country. Some had long careers in the military. Some had signed up to serve in the shadow of 9/11. Some had known intense combat in Iraq and Afghanistan, and some cared for those who didn't. Their lives speak to the strength, the dignity, the decency of those who serve. And that's how they will be remembered. But that same spirit is embodied in the community here at Fort Hood. and in the many wounded who are still recovering. As was already mentioned, in those terrible minutes during the attack, soldiers made makeshift tourniquets out of their clothes. They braved gunfire to reach the wounded and ferried them back to safety in the backs of cars and a pickup truck. One young soldier, Amber Barr, was so intent on helping others, she did not realize for some time that she herself had been shot in the back. 2 police officers, Mark Todd and Kim Munley, saved countless lives by risking their own. One medic, Francisco de la Serna, treated both Officer Munley and the gunman who shot her. It may be hard to comprehend the twisted logic that led to this tragedy, but this much we do know. No faith justifies these murderous and craven acts.